rained through her fingers. Page 5160. Their voices drifted back to Elaine, muffled. She let out her breath, tilted up her head, and gave Ned a reassuring smile. He wasn't paying attention. His gaze fixed upon the crumbled edge of the wall the imps had disappeared around. A man stepped into view. Elaine's heart skipped a beat. A beautiful man, this, with the cold beauty of black depths under a pale sky and lonely lands. A coronet of seaweed twined around a head the color of a seal's pelt. His dark eyes held flame, like fiery coals, and they looked straight through Elaine's magic and held her gaze. Ned was already moving as the man smiled a heart-catching, dangerous smile and said, his voice that of the sea embracing a drowning man, "I found you." A cold light pierced Elaine's illusion. The enchantment shivered into motes, winking out in the grey-gold day. Salt tanged against her lips. Her hair blew back in a sudden sharp wind. Ned sprang from her side, arm moving in a sweeping gesture. His strong, sure magic burst upwards in a rumble of mud, water, and rubble. The beautiful man vanished. Ned seized Elaine by the wrist and tugged her towards the house. For one horrible moment, she didn't think her frozen muscles would work, but then her feet stumbled over a rock and she was jogging, then running, behind him, her right arm extended in front of her. She had to run, or else pitch forward onto her face. Ned's urgent grip gave her no other choice. The knapsack was far behind, but her hand had instinctively grabbed poker. Not that it was much of a weapon against fairies. They plunged through the gaping doorway. Inside, Elaine slipped on a smear of mud, was pulled upright by Ned's hand. They stamped up the servants' staircase, the steps shaking under their feet. Elaine felt a tremble grow through the entire building and shrank back, resisting his pull. "Ned," she faltered, "this entire place," his face, pale in the gloom, flickered back to her for a brief moment. "We'll stand as long as we needed to. Come." Again, that insistent tug, and the swell of Ned's magic as it filled the space. He was holding the house up, just for a little while, and at her back, a laughing wind, full of needle pricks, sang to her of salt water and dark depths. Elaine lifted her skirt with her free hand and quickened her pace. They ran into the front hallway, stripped bare of paper and plaster, revealing its wet, naked framework. Overhead, timbers groaned ominously. Their feet kicked up stagnant water in dark droplets. Elaine was sure something bone-like went crunch under them. The front door, by some perverse coincidence, had survived the deluge, though the fan light above had lost its glass. Ned clicked his fingers, and the sharp sound was echoed by cracks in the door. Ned seized the tarnished doorknob and tugged. The door fell to splinters around him. His magic was like lightning, powerful and quick. Elaine felt a stab of envy. "Careful," he said, without looking back. Stepping over the threshold, Elaine followed, wrapping loose fabric close to her body. The vial in her coat pocket was a hard lump against her thigh. In the end, there was always that. A grubble chittering echoed behind them. Elaine glanced over her shoulder. The imps were halfway down the corridor. She hurried after Ned, clattering down the steps. Out of the way, Ned, in the middle of the street, yanked both Elaine and his magic towards him. She found herself falling into his chest, her face scrunched against broadcloth and brass buttons. His magic left a sudden, brief emptiness in the house behind. The world seemed to hold its breath. Elaine's back prickled. She breathed in the scent of linen and male sweat, felt the steady drumbeat of his heart. With a sigh and a crack and a rumble, the house collapsed. A moment later, its neighbor followed suit. Their fall quivered through the street, vibrating up Elaine's legs and drumming against her ears. Dust bloomed in sudden, enfolding clouds. Elaine burrowed her face in the crook of her elbow, but it was unneeded. Ned's magic shifted again, and the dust and debris parted around him. When the echoes had died away, Elaine pushed herself away from Ned. "Sorry," she said to his mud-caked boots. She heard, rather than saw, his surprise. "What for?" Elaine hunched her shoulders. "For the way my charm failed back there," she replied to the boots. "If you're going to apologize," said Ned dryly, "at least look up." Elaine lifted her chin, squinting a little in the brightness. The sun had peeped out from behind the clouds again. Water shivered in broken gleams around them, tinkling against stone. Ned examined her with interest, as if she were a specimen of a previously unknown creature. "You are sorry. Why? No enchantment is unbreakable, as mine demonstrates so spectacularly." Bitterness threaded her voice. "You trusted me to take care of the situation, and it was a mistake." Davy's voice in the back of her mind whispered, "Weak, weak and unworthy." Ned shrugged. "If it had been only the imps, your solution was the most elegant one. Bad luck about the Ichushka, though. Hadn't expected to see one here, though considering everything else. I don't know why I'm surprised. Let's go." He turned away and splashed down the street. Elaine stared at his back. No taunts, not even a disappointed sigh. "Well," Ned demanded over his shoulder, "we can't wait around for them to catch us. Where in all of Brighton are we?" He looked around in an aggrieved manner as if expecting the shattered buildings to answer. "Right, there isn't time for me to mope about my lack of strength." Elaine straightened and hurried after him. "If we keep going, we'll run into St. James's Street." Ned brightened. "Good. We need to make our way to the Stein and the pavilion beyond it." He still meant to sneak into the palace. Ned laughed. "Don't worry, Elaine. I don't intend to embroil you in burglary and theft. I have to meet a man first. He'll have a bolt hole." "What sort of man?" asked Elaine. They turned into St. James's, churning up water. A forlorn boot floated by and speckled gobies flickered through the liquid. "He won't do you any harm," Ned assured her. "And, by the way, have you noticed?" "Yes," said Elaine shortly. How could she not? She'd lived with the sound of water always in her ears. She knew its moods. The tide was coming in. Green-brown currents churned in from the sea. Here the damage was more extensive, as if the ire of the sea had been directed towards the heart of Brighton's high society. The water rose above Elaine's ankles. Several inches of her skirts were already sodden. Ned eyed the running water with misgiving. "I'm no seaman," he pronounced, "but this seems rather fast." "It is," said Elaine grimly. A steady wind blew in from the sea, piling heaps of grey clouds, heavy with rain and tattered at the edges, over Brighton. "We need shelter, and soon." This time, she took the lead, gaze darting left and right, looking for any edifice that seemed safe enough. Rows of collapsed buildings lined the street. A shiver went through her. We should have stayed put. Up ahead, the street poured itself into an open field, full of the broken bones of what had once been edifices on Marine Parade. Elaine couldn't help a gasp as she surveyed the emptiness. "Davy, what have you done? All this? For the tears?" Past the destruction, the Stein, once a place of green grass and walks, was now a small lake, its surface broken and choppy with wavelets. A flash of movement to her right, a glimmer of light on something dark and sleek, a clatter of hooves, and a horse leapt in front of her. Diamond droplets of water showered Elaine. Her breath hitched, snatched away by wonder and beauty and fear. High the color of wet slate, a wild, dark mane, tangled with sea wrack, burning bright eyes. Sea water churned white around its legs. Its long tail drifted upon the surface. The creature tossed its head, inviting. Elaine balled her fists, refused to move. She, too, could be stubborn. Ned splashed to her side. She saw him from the corner of her eye, a little shabby, a little grimy, inelegant and graceless, next to the wild, otherworldly beauty of the Ichushka. He squeezed her shoulder. "Well done," he murmured. "Not many mortals can resist the lure. If we're separated, go to Donaldson's. My man will meet you there." His hand clasped hers briefly. Then he passed by. Maybe he stooped into the water, or maybe he called to it. But a long, sharp spar of wood appeared in his hand. The Ichushka let out its breath in a snort of steam and malice. It danced impatiently, then put down its head and charged. Man and beast clashed in a spray of salt water that drenched Elaine from head to toe. The Ichushka struck like a snake, teeth snapping together bare inches from Ned's shoulder. Ned ducked, thrusting his makeshift weapon towards the fiery creature's chest. Elaine's eyes were blurry and stinging. In her light and water-smeared vision, the piece of driftwood was a spear tipped with light, or else a young sapling, sharpened to a point, still budding leaves. She drew the vapor in the air to herself, and fresh water dripped down her forehead. It washed away the prickling in her eyes and the salty taste on her lips. Blinking, she withdrew from the combatant's range. The two circled one another warily, making little darts and thrusts in an exploratory manner. Elaine looked around, seeking some way to tip the balance of power Ned's way. She stiffened. Half a dozen imps perched on nearby ruins, eyes glittering malevolently. One of them bent his knees, preparing to run and jump. With a sweep of her magic, Elaine scooped up all the moisture around it and slapped the imp in the face with it. The charm was far from elegant, but effective. The unexpected pressure, the blurring of vision, and the suddenly slick footing made a formidable combination. The imp teetered on loose stones, windmilled its arms, lost its balance, and fell into the water with a splash. "Serves you right, coward. Trying to sneak up on Ned like that." Elaine's elation was short-lived. All the imps turned towards her. "Oh dear." Elaine held the poker out in challenge. "Come on, then." At least her voice did not quaver at the end. Ned and the Ichushka wore a blur of water and movement in her periphery. She had to trust him to take care of himself. Elaine focused on the rapidly approaching imps. She couldn't use her magic to hide from them, but even incomplete illusions had their uses. A thin drizzle fell from the clouds overhead, fine and lace-like over her hair, face, and hands. The first imp to reach her misjudged its blow, clawed hands missing her side by inches. A well-placed strike with the poker flung it several feet away. The second leapt for her, but landed short, splashing them both. Elaine rapped the imp smartly on the head before it could get over its surprise, and then she had no time to think, only react, for the rest of the imps were upon her. Her skirt quickly soaked up more water and grew heavy. Her movements were too slow. The imps didn't like the sea much, either. They thrashed about the street, shrieking rage and dismay. Elaine angled herself, so that the incoming tide pushed her assailants away, but struggled to keep her own balance against the onslaught. Rain fell in great pattering drops, faster and faster, beating down upon her head, plastering her hair to her head and her clothes to her body. Elaine tripped over an unseen rock, nearly fell. She grasped the rain, twisting it into ropes, wrapping them around the imps, holding them back. Pinned to empty air, they kicked and snarled, while Elaine, a stitch pinching her side, put her hands on her knees and panted. She had that light-headed feeling of partial disembodiment, of her soul stretched out from her body, that always accompanied the overextension of her magic.